Hi, welcome to the Poultry Keepers podcast. I'm Rip Stalvey, and together with Mandolin Royal and John Gunnerman, we're your co-hosts for this show, and it's our mission to help you have a happy, healthy, and productive flock. This episode is an audio replay from a previously recorded Poultry Keepers 360 live stream. It features Jeff Mattocks talking about feeds and the ingredients used to make them. It will help you better understand the feed you're using to feed your birds. Now, here's Jeff.
We're going to talk about looking at feed tags, what's on a feed tag, what the generic terms and so on are, and then we'll look at the different grains and what they actually are used for in the feed. So I'll give you the 10,000 foot view of what feeds are about. So the whys and what for is feed. When you're looking at your feed tag, the big manufacturers, and I don't need to name names, you can go, you'll see it for yourself, right? When you're reading tags, and this is really frustrating for me, is code names like processed grain products, processed protein products, processed grain byproducts, processed protein byproducts, right? Those are in there. The reason they do that is today, if corn is cheaper than wheat, they're going to put in more corn. And tomorrow, if barley is cheaper than corn, they're going to use more barley, right? So it allows them to change the ingredients every day or whenever they want to. And they don't have to tell you what they changed, right? And you've been raising chickens long enough. You opened up bags and say, this don't look the same as it did 3 weeks ago or a month ago or the last time I bought feed. They're doing it to reduce cost, hold costs down, increase their profit, or if there's a poor lack of availability for a certain grain, it allows them to do substitutions. It's a broad term. So you don't know what's in that processed grain product. It could be corn, oat, wheat, barley, could be all of them, may only be one of them, and you don't know which one it is. And they're not going to tell you.
Maybe I'm wrong for thinking this way, but when I see these things on the feed tag like processed grain products or grain byproduct or protein byproduct, to me, that is a red flag. That's maybe not as good a quality of feed as I need to be looking for. Am I wrong for thinking that way?
I wish everybody felt that way. And here's the thing. You don't know for sure, right? Again, it's a code name, right? It's a top secret, insiders only. You don't know what they're using, right? Whether it's Neutrino by Cargill, whether it's Purina, whether it's, doesn't matter, right? They're all play the same game.
Mm-hmm.
And as the commodity market changes, so does those ingredients. In later slides, we'll show which ones are the byproducts, where they fall into and things like that. So what I really like, what I hope after tonight, folks are going to go look at is when you see a tag that says corn, wheat, barley, oats, it's actually naming out the ingredients for you, right? Those feed manufacturers can't change that formula without changing that tag. So they're locked into a specific formula, which is really awesome for you because you find a feed that you like and the label says this is what's on it. It's always going to be there. The other thing that's nice about that is feeds have to be listed in descending order. The largest input in that feed is always first, the second largest second, et cetera, right down the line. It can tell me what the percentage, I can figure out what the percentage of corn is in there or what the percentage of soybean meal is in there or so on. And eventually, if you keep listening to the show and we blab on, you're going to know how to look up that too, because we're going to cover it someday. Feed tags are really important. I'm a label reader no matter where I go, whether it's a grocery store, the feed store, doesn't matter. I'm a label reader and it's important to me and I want to know.
Excuse me for butting in here, but I just can't help myself. When I see those terms like corn, wheat, barley, oat, soybeans, whatever in there, that tells me that I'm getting a fairly consistent feed. And I can tell if they're starting to change the formulation. It used to drive me absolutely nuts when they would change the formula on the feed Sometimes, not always, but sometimes I can see it. I can smell it. I've even been known to taste it. Yeah, I'm that screwy. But this is something I look for every time that I'm seeing what the ingredients are.
Rip, you're not screwy for tasting feed. I taste feed everywhere I go. Every time I go on to a farm or a feed mill or whatever, I'm testing and tasting. And look, people, pick it up, taste it. If it doesn't taste good to you, why are you feeding it? All right, sorry, I'm going to get off my high horse.
That's all right. But you can also tell if the feed is fresh if you taste it.
And there's nothing in there that's going to hurt you, right?
No.
There's absolutely, we hope there's nothing in there that's going to hurt you. If you get sick from tasting your chicken feed, then we got a problem. So
I'm not talking about eating a bowl full for breakfast or anything.
Hey, a really good chicken feed, I wouldn't mind taking it in the house, adding a little hot water to it, make me a little chicken feed, oatmeal, and that's what it should be. That's what it should be like. So
I'm not eating no raw corn.
Why? You don't eat sweet corn. You don't eat
alfalfa meal. Yes, they cook. I eat sweet corn after they cook it. I know that's weird, but
all right. What's on a feed tag? You have to have, so the top of the feed tag has to say, like it doesn't have to say the company's name, but usually it'll be the brand name and your title. But it has to clearly state what type of animal it's for and what class. So chick starter, chick grower, layer, etc. So that has to be at the top. You've all seen that. If you see a generic term, that should be a red flag for you. If it's not there, a lot of people share with me the tags that they're feeding, right? They'll message me, email me, whatever. Say, what do you think of this feed, right? You see it all the time on Poultry Breeder Nutrition or Poultry Keepers 360. And I tell them what I see. I don't hold back. I don't sugarcoat it. If you're a sensitive person, don't ask me that question because I'm going to be blunt. Okay. So these things have to be on the tag. And then you have the guaranteed analysis comes next, right? Now, if there's a medication declaration, has to be in there, supposed to be in there between what type of feed it is and the guarantee. So it should be highlighted if it's medicated. So then you go on to the guaranteed analysis, right? And the guaranteed analysis, these are the levels that are supposed to be in there. You need to read the little fine print that says minimum and maximum. But for a poultry tag in the United States, what is legal is you have to have protein minimum. You have to have the fat minimum. You have to have the fiber maximum. Okay. You got to have the lysine minimum. You have to have the methionine minimum. You got to have the calcium, both minimum and maximum. You have to have the phosphorus minimum, salt minimum and maximum, because too much salt in a poultry diet is a bad thing. And you'll have to have sodium minimum and maximum. And I forgot to put the maximum in there, but the sodium has to be. These are required by law. There's a group of people out there that says you have to do this, right? This is what you have to put in on your label. And they control all of us in the feed industry. So then down below that is going to be your ingredient listing. Again, there's some generic terms that can be used, but not typically, like we said on the previous slide, are you going to see processed grain products, processed grain byproducts, et cetera? But we talked about that a little bit, but the ingredients are listed in descending order from largest to smallest. If the label was made correctly, I see a lot of labels that are not in accordance with the laws that we have to follow. And you may run into some of those too. Now, I would not encourage you to run up to the feed mill manager and say, this label's not right. This label's not right. They're probably going to ban you from the store or label you a heretic behind your back. So just don't do that. Just know that it's not. But if they can't label their feed correctly, what's the chances that they could make their feed correctly? Okay. So just ponder on that a little while. And at the bottom, every bag has to say who the manufacturer or the guarantor is for that feed, including their address. Not a complete address. It's supposed to be a mailing address. So it'll be like post office, box town, etc. These are the requirements for a feed label. That's pretty cut and dry.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So you said the United States, right? I feel like I see that there's a lot less on a Canadian feed tag. Is that?
Oh, it's horrible up there. Yeah, we don't even. For our Canadian friends listening, I feel sorry for you, but they don't have to list hardly anything. They have a much shorter list of guarantees. Amino acids aren't on there. They don't have to put their ingredients on there. They're supposed to make them available by request, but we've had probably a dozen followers of PK360 and other places that have requested it and they don't get it, right? They just, they just get blown up and ignored. That's a whole other. And then when you get to Mexico, it's another world. And when you get to the Philippines eggs, it's a whole other world. Every place is different, but I can talk what is required here in the U.S. because I have to live by those laws here at Fertrell.
All right. So one more question.
Okay.
Is there any size of a operation that gets labeled like this? Here's my example. There's been more than one person who asked me to make feed for them and sell it to them. And I've always said no. Now I have an even bigger reason to say no, right? Because I would have to have a label that has all that on it.
If you're a business that sells feed or animal supplements or something like that, right? Mule City Feeds in your neck of the woods or something like that. And they seem to be great people. So I'm not picking on them. Don't. But they're registered with the State Department of Ag and any state, and we have to register in any state that we sell into. Okay. Every state that I sell any of my animal nutrition products, I have to register with that state and I have to pay what they call tonnage fees based on the number of tons that I sell. I have to pay them a tax. Okay. People don't know this. Now, for you as the farmer wanting to help out a friend, if you chose to do that, which I know you won't, so nobody asked her, but you can, right? There's no, you don't have to abide by that. You're not selling it. Okay. You're
mixing.
Right. Right. And you know what? And Karen, if you came to me and said, Jeff, I want you to make this custom mineral mix for my chickens, right?
Yep.
So that's fine. We talk about what it is. You write a letter that I keep on file that says you requested this custom mineral mix. On a custom feed or mineral mix, I do not have to put a guaranteed analysis on it or an ingredient list. It can say custom mix for Apex Poultry Farm, period. It still has to have who made it down at the bottom, but at the top, when it says custom and I have a letter on file that says you requested that custom, then I no longer have to follow those guidelines. So for people who are getting a custom feed, there's not a requirement for them to put a guaranteed analysis or a list of ingredients on that. But you should have already, that's the whole purpose of the letter on file, right? You sat down and worked it out. I want these ingredients. I want it made to this specification. This is what I want. And so you already have that relationship. You already know what's in there. Yeah. And if you are getting a custom mix made by somebody, you can always request what's the analysis of it, right? What are you using? You're in control. It's your custom mix, but not so much for over-the-counter feeds.
I just feel like so many people are thinking that they've found a perfect, small, little, tiny niche producer that's making feed. You know what I mean? And that don't get this information, but maybe that's okay because they're working together with them to create the diet.
Yeah, I got lots of people that go to the local farmer down the road who has his own grinder mixer. There's still a few of these out there, and they'll take the supplements, they take the formula, and the old farmer's more than happy to help them out, makes a custom mix for them. They drive home with their feed, and that's awesome when that happens, right? And everybody's happy. But it's few and far between. It's less than 1%. Everybody likes convenience. We drive down to Tractor Supply, we pick up our bag of whatever, and off we go. And people don't check dates. People won't read labels. People just, oh, hey, there's 4-layer feeds here on the shelf. Which one's cheapest? And that's what they get, and they go. Okay. And I'm not picking on anybody out there. I'm just saying this is what I hear almost every day of my life here at talking to chicken people. So
our people would go to the store and say, which one's the most expensive? But that's not necessarily the best either.
If you know the ingredients and you know where it come from, but look, even if you don't know all those things, there's nothing wrong with taking a tongueful of chicken feed. There's nothing in there that should hurt you. If it doesn't taste good and appealing or fresh, then I don't know, why are we doing it? But I find that talking with a lot of folks and helping them with their feed a lot of folks don't understand why different ingredients are used. Okay. What are they actually in there for? Or everybody knows the common stuff pretty much, but they don't know beyond that. In a commercial feed, when you see processed grain product, that could include corn, wheat, barley, oats, milo, sorghum, which is grain sorghum, rye, triticale. So those that I just rattled off, those are all energy feeds. Okay. Those are all starches for carbohydrates to get the energy level to the desired level. Your processed protein products are going to be almost always is going to be soybean meal, solvent extracted soybean meal. That is the most heavily traded protein source out there. Depending on where you live and what the availability is, could be corn gluten meal, which is 60% protein, corn gluten feed, which is only 20% protein, corn distillers, dried distillers grain, sometimes it's called. You're going to see that on a lot of labels, and those are coming from the ethanol plants. I'm not a big fan. Further north and west you go, you're going to see peas, canola meal. You get down into Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, you're going to see cottonseed meal. Cotton is not a good chicken feed. You don't want cotton in there. Peanut meal, pretty readily used. Now, sunflower meal is showing up all over the place. There's a little bit of a shortage right now, but proteins can be made pretty much from any of the oil seeds, even linseed, which is flax, anything that they're pressing the oil out of. But when you see meal, all right, they've pressed the oil out of it. Believe it or not, okay, people don't understand this. They can't wrap their head around it. The meal that goes into our animal feeds is the byproduct, okay? They are pressing oil seed because they want the oil. There's a higher value in oil than there is in the residual meal. For 100 years, during the Industrial Revolution in the United States, and we started pressing oil seeds and doing things like this, but they've been looking for ways to use byproducts from other industries and they always push it off on agriculture, whether it's for fertilizer, whether it's for animal feed, whatever, right? We've been stuck with the byproducts and the leftovers for close to 100 years, right? So the Industrial Revolution was what, 30s, 40s, somewhere in there. Rip, you were around those days, weren't you? I'm just teasing.
I feel like
Anyway, yeah, since that time frame, they've been looking for places to go with byproducts, and they've been running the experiment, right? They feed a little bit of this, they feed a little bit of that to the animals, see if they die, see how well they perform, and see if they can figure out how to fix them so the animal can actually utilize them. Just know that going into it. When you see the word meal, it's a byproduct where oil has been removed or something's been removed. So like corn gluten meal is when they pull off the corn syrup for cooking and sweeteners, and so all the meals are a byproduct. So we move on to processed grain byproducts, right? So what does that word actually mean? Most of the time it's wheat middlings. So when they mill wheat for flour to make white flour, not whole wheat flour, there's outer skin layers on the wheat, the outer shell that comes off, and those are known as the wheat middlings. Okay. Same thing happens with soybeans. So when they're making soybean meal, to press the oil, when they do that first crack and roll, the outer skin of the soybean will fly off, and they collect that, and it goes into the feed stream primarily as a filler and a fiber. Depending on where you live and if they have access to it, there's a product called bakery waste or bakery meal, and bakery meal is unsold, mispackaged, overrun, outdated bakery product. Okay, could be Little Debbie cakes, it could be loaves of bread that didn't get sold. It could be anything that falls into the category of bakery, and they'll bring that back and they grind it up, they process it, and they turn it into a meal. They don't always remove the packaging, just so you know. You look really close, you'll see little pieces of plastic in there and whatnot. Wheat bran, the wheat middling is the outer layer. The wheat bran is like the second layer, closer to the heart of the wheat berry. Some places you'll find that if it's been separated out. And there's other byproducts out there. Like I said, the most common is wheat middlings. It's cheap. It's easy. It's been widely used. It's a very inexpensive filler. It looks good on paper. And for all of you who are in love with pellets, you have to have wheat middlings to make a good hard pellet. The harder the pellet, the more wheat middlings that are in it. Okay. Again, I don't sugarcoat it much. That's the bare bones truth of how you make a pellet. So,
Jeff, I've got a question that's related, but while we're talking about grains, this is probably coming up in some people's mind, and that's what grain can be substituted for what, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Breeders of white-skinned birds like Orpingtons, Marans, are afraid to use corn because they don't want to turn the skin or the legs of the shanks or anything yellow. And so there is an aversion to feeding corn in the diet. Now, if they wanted to go out and make, say, a scratch feed, what could they use to replace corn in that scratch feed mix? And I'm using that because it's probably the most common thing folks associate with.
Wheat's fine. Milo, grain sorghum's fine. You're not going to get the pigmentation. There's no yellowing in that. We can make a combination of wheat, Milo, and barley, wheat, Milo, and oats, depending on where you live. If you're down in Louisiana or Texas where they grow a bunch of rice, we can use rice as part of that. Yeah, it's not hard at all to make a scratch grain or to make a feed around that without the yellowing factor of corn. And I think if you keep just for the listener's sake, and I'm going to throw this out here so you know too, Rip, is I would tell you that corn is probably 40 to 50% of every commercial chicken diet out there. Okay. Because it's the cheapest grain to put in there.
Yep.
Right. So they're going to balance that amount of corn. Then they're going to put in there at least 300 to 400 pounds of wheat middlings. You're probably looking at about 800 pounds of corn, 400 pounds of wheat middlings, about 400 pounds of soybean meal. And then they're going to fill it up with fluffy, big word type stuff. Just so you feel like you're getting more for your dollar. It's going to be 800 to 900 pounds of corn and then 400 to 500 pounds of wheat middling, depending on what protein level you're after. Then the soybean meal may be anywhere from 400 to 600. It's not, when you do something long enough, you can reverse engineer a feed tag and know what levels the ingredients are going to be in. Yeah. I lay awake at night thinking about, wonder what kind of crap they're putting in that feed today. So I shouldn't be that way. When you're passionate about something, that's what you do. So
yeah. Could we talk about oats for a minute? Is there a desired form of oats to give to chickens? I don't know. You can get whole oats, you can get clipped oats, you can get crimped oats.
Yeah, you can get oat groats, naked oats, clipped oats, steel cut oats. You can get whole oats. You can get jockey oats. You can get Swedish oats. You can get Canadian oats. Yeah, people just get carried away. Look, I'm just looking for, in my formulas, I'm just looking for a plain old whole oat. It doesn't have to be jockey oats. It doesn't have to be, but a lot of times all you can get are what they call horse oats, which are a little bit more plump and they're a little bit more expensive. If you're not in a grain region where you can go find these things, you're stuck buying it at Tractor Supply or wherever. I'm not picking on Tractor Supply.
Horse oats is the only thing I found down here.
Yeah, that's fine. It don't matter. There's not a big difference. The horse oats have been screened and graded. So you're getting these big, fat, plump oats and they look really pretty. A little bit easier for the horses to pick up. Again, the industry is marketing to a specific species to make them feel special. And if we have horse listeners tonight, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on your toes, but there's the truth of it.
And for all our breeders of white-skinned birds, there are some alternatives out there. So you don't have to mess up your birds by feeding them corn.
But you're not going to get it from a commercial feed, right? Look, a commercial feed is so locked into corn, right? They don't have a choice. Corn is king. It's everywhere. It's easy. It's cheap.
To be fair, there's corn in all of my stuff. My holder diet is 35% corn. So even when you're mixing your own, you're still using a whole lot of corn unless you're instructed to not. Yeah.
And that's not a lot of corn. I see diets roll in front of me that are 70% corn, gang.
Good.
Yeah. The real bare minimum by the barrel type feeds is going to be 1,450 pounds of corn, 450 pounds of soybean meal. Then you start putting in your minerals and your vitamins and stuff like that, and your little additives. That's all that's in there, corn and soybean meal, right? And there's no room for anything else. And yeah, no, yours is 35% is a wonderful number.
So a corn-free feed would be healthier and easier to accomplish than a soy-free feed.
It's easier to accomplish. I don't feel the need to be necessarily corn-free, but people do, and that's fine. I like to work with what the region of the country grows the best and try and utilize those grains when I can. If you're selling eggs for table eggs and you need good yolk color, you're going to be dependent on corn and alfalfa meal, things like that. So there's no real way around it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh there, but when you said what grows the best in your region and down here, that would have to be golf courses.
Yeah.
Kudzu. Can you use kudzu?
We don't have kudzu in Florida, or not in my part of Florida.
As I promised earlier, I put like all the energy grains on one slide for you so you can easily see how they compare. So look, I didn't put all the nutrients on there. Look, I'm tracking somewhere close to 60 different nutrient levels when I put together a feed formula. These are the most critical. Okay. So it's just for your understanding, but barley, for instance, going to be anywhere from 10 to 12 protein. It's going to be low fat. It's 1.9, 2%. Fiber typical. These are national averages. Okay. You may be in a place where this is completely different, and that's fine. These are just national average numbers that we use. They're actually international numbers that I use. Fiber level at 5, energy. This is measured in kilocalories per pound. So anybody that's gotten a ration from me, you'll see an energy calculation. So we have to add all these up based on the pounds used, et cetera. So you got your calcium, you got your phosphorus. I had to abbreviate phosphorus, otherwise I couldn't get all this on one slide. Lysine, methionine. For the dedicated listeners, I've beat this horse to death. I've talked about lysine and methionine forever. So you look at corn, it doesn't matter whether it's cracked or whether it starts out as whole corn that's ground. National average, we're looking at 8%, 3.5 fat, 2.9 fiber, good energy, really high energy because it's got a huge amount of starch in it and with a low fiber. So fiber affects the energy because when we look at oats later on, you'll see a way lower energy. So as the fiber goes up, the energy goes down. And you can see that in the rice down there. Rice should be a higher energy, but rice actually with that fiber at 10% it knocks it down again. Almost no mineral, 0.01 on calcium, 0.25 on phosphorus. These are not helping. These are actually hurting the diet, if you will. Like pretty much every poultry diet, I'm looking for a phosphorus at least. I like 0.75. I'm lucky to see a 0.6 or a 0.65 in phosphorus, right? Again, looking for lysine levels at close to 1%. These are 0.22. So you can see they're not helping the diets whatsoever. Corn doesn't have a lot of lysine, doesn't have a lot of methionine. It's only there for the energy, just only there for the energy. And millet, a little bit better on protein, not a lot of millet grown. You got to be in that Kansas, Colorado area. We don't make a lot of millet, and most of the millet that is grown is going into like wild bird seed or specialty feeds. So it's rare to see millet show up in a chicken feed, but it's out there. You live in the Midwest or in the South, grain sorghum known as Milo, it'll run 10 to 11% protein. The higher yielding is going to be 7.5. Again, I'm using national averages. Fat level 2.8, fiber 2. It's the best replacement for corn actually, as far as energy goes, because it has a really good starch. So it's around 1,500. Birds really like it. Got a little bit better mineral profile, but the amino acid profile is worse. So again, everything on here is only it all goes into the pot as far as calculation goes, but these are the primary ingredients that we look to for our energy to achieve the required amount of energy. That's purely what they're in here for. I've had people contact me and say, hey, I'm going to increase my corn. Is that going to hurt my protein? Yeah, it's actually going to drag your protein down. But I've had people who think that corn will increase the protein and mess a chicken up. It's not.
But the energy is what makes them stop eating, though, right?
Yeah. So according to some studies and university data, we are told that chickens eat for their energy needs. And I think this is true of probably 95% of all chickens. When they hit a certain calorie count, they're no longer interested in eating. I think that there's a 5 to 10% out there that just like to eat. They're like me. They're going to just keep eating until they're full, right? They can't help themselves, right? But the majority of chickens eat for their energy needs, and they're going to stop when they hit their calories required for the day based on temperature, living environment, all that.
Thank you for joining us this week. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released, and they're released every Tuesday. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we'd like to ask you to drop us an email at poultrykeeperspodcast@gmail.com and share your thoughts about the show. We'll see you next week.